Hey everybody, welcome to the 71st edition of Drive-Thru Review. Today I'm going to talk about For Fame and Fortune, or F3 for short. It's the last one I'm doing in a little series of 4 quick card games that are awesome. This one, I'm not sure how available it is. Actually, the publisher was kind enough to send this to me after I watched a video by Scott Nicholson, who did a quick in-play review. And he said it's a card drafting and Texas Hold'em game, and I says I have to have that game. So I emailed them and they sent it to me, and this is actually I don't know if it's a beta copy, but it's sort of a first print run, and they made a couple of minor tweaks to the game since then, so I expect future runs coming out will be slightly different, but I'll point those out here in case you do get a hold of the first run of it. So let me jump into how it plays, and I will say before I get started, it plays really well from 2 to 6 players. I haven't played it with 6. I played with 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know it's going to play good with 6. It plays good with 2 to 5, so it's got to play good with 6. So anyway, let's jump into how it works and go from there. Okay, let me show you what you get in the box. First, I'm going to start with my only gripe about the game, and it's a minor gripe mostly because I'm a big idiot. So you've got your rules for the game are on these cards, and I think we must have played this game wrong probably 10 times because the pacing of the rules was screwing me up. However, if you go to Board Game Geek, there's a couple of threads started by me asking questions and clarifications. So the game actually is really straightforward and simple. So hopefully this video will help if anybody else has trouble with the rules, but really they're not that bad, so I think I'm just dumb. So you got the rules on there, and then a list of hands that you're going to be making, which are similar to poker hands. However, in the edition I have, there is what's called a Rainbow Fulfillment. This does no longer exist in the game. So if you have this edition with the Rainbow Fulfillment, you ignore this. This is not a legal hand to play. Secondly, you've got a multiplayer card, and you'll be rotating this throughout the game to sort of increase the stakes and increase the amount of points that are at stake in the game. There's an extra one, which is considered a variant and also suggested when you are playing with 6 to use this, but we haven't used that yet. And then you've got basically 5 suits of cards, and these are not your traditional cards. They are very similar, but you could not play this game with a regular deck of cards, so keep that in mind. So you've got diamonds, clovers, fire, swords, and birds. You can see here at the bottom that the suits are also marked with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So certain suits are stronger than others, but you don't have to memorize it. It's nice because it's depicted here on the bottom. Also at the bottom of these cards are stakes, and you can see they're like poker chips. So I'll explain how those come into play in a minute, but you can stake cards and you're basically betting this much. Lastly, these all go from 1 to 14, but the 14 and the 1 are the same card. So there's actually only 13 cards. They go 1 to 13, but the 1 is also the same as the 14. Sort of like the ace is low and high. There's also some wild cards in the game, but I would highly suggest you do not play with these until you have played this game several times. The rules suggest playing with these with 6, and I personally would suggest probably not doing that because if you can see here, the stakes are quite a bit higher. And when I explain how the game works, you can see that, some foolish play with these wild cards were really going to throw the game out of whack. So I would hold these aside, even if playing with 6, in my opinion. Lastly, we have these modifier cards, the multiplier modifier cards. And these are actually really fun, but I still, again, would not throw these in until you've played the game a few times. But we really like playing with these, but it's just something that I would hold off on. Finally, while we're talking about things that you should hold off on, there's a couple of advanced scoring variants that you should also hold off on. But really, when you throw all this stuff into the mix, and these scoring variants, the extra modifiers, all this stuff, you've got a really meaty game here that you can play for a long, long time, and with people of different skill levels. And the game will be satisfying, I think, at all skill levels. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot to this game as far as, variability options and, variants and things you can play. Now let me quickly show you what you're going to try to be doing with the cards that you're dealt and through the process of the game. And as I said, this Rainbow Fulfillment here, this is going to be ignored. This doesn't exist. So first of all, you're going to try to get the lowest hand, 3.5 fortunes, which is basically a full house in poker. Next is 4 of a kind. Finally is a partial fulfillment, which is basically a straight flush. You need to have a straight but all the same color. And lastly, a better than a partial fulfillment or a straight flush is 5 of a kind. And the only thing that's going to beat 5 of a kind is basically a royal flush. That's 10 through 14 of all the same suit. So I'm just going to teach you mostly just the basic game now, and that's just the basic deck of cards without the wild cards and this one modifier card here, the multiplier. So the very first thing everybody's going to do on their turn, you're going to get everybody 10 cards, and then you're going to have to take 5 cards and pass them to the player on your left. So you're going to try to build, close to the best hand, or kind of set yourself up for a good hand, and then you pass 5 cards to the left. And then whoever was the dealer is going to have this card in front of them. And so they're going to be the dealer, and then the person to the left of the dealer, after you've drafted those 5 cards and passed them around, the person to the left of the dealer is going to have a choice. He can either pass, which is basically do nothing, or he can stake a card. Now if he stakes a card, he's going to take one of these cards. Let's say he's going to take this 5. And he's going to put that in front of him. And so basically he's staked $1 or 1 point. So immediately when somebody stakes, you're going to take and have to draft right away. So what you do whenever somebody stakes is you draft 5 cards minus the amount of cards that have been staked. So in this case, if that was the first person, he'd stake a card, and everybody would take 4 cards, 5 minus the 1, and pass them to the left. The person that staked will then draw back up to 10 cards, and then it'll keep going around. Now if everybody passes in order, and nobody has staked a card, then you're going to force a draft. So if at the first turn of the game, everybody just passes all the way around the table, you're going to take and draft the 5 cards again and pass them around. Or in a case of, let's say a couple turns have gone by, there's been a couple cards staked, everybody passes, then you're going to have to draft 5 minus the number of face-up cards, in this case 2, so you pass 3 cards left. Keep doing this around and around until there are 4 cards that have been staked. Now all of these are in front of the same player, but they could be in front of different players. Now you're no longer going to draft any cards. But when you pass now, instead of just passing, you'll draw a card from the top of the draw deck, or if there's a discarded card, you can draw the top card from the discard pile. So let's say it's come around to me, I pass, I'll draw a card, and maybe I'll keep it, maybe I'll get rid of it, and then I'll have to discard a card. Now when I discard that card, this card can be stolen. And a way that a card is stolen is you can either create 3 of a kind with it, or a mini straight. So let's say I had 2 8s. And I wanted to steal this and then put that in front of me. And this is not part of my stakes. This is just my own personal thing, and it's part of my hand. Because after I steal, I have to discard a card. And so this is part of my hand, but it's just showing to everybody else, and I have less cards in my actual hand. And then when I discard that card, this card can actually be stolen by somebody else. And so the play is going to jump all over the place by these people stealing the cards until finally somebody stakes that 5th card, and then the round's going to end, everybody's going to reveal their hands. Now the person that stakes the 5th card has to build one of the valid hands, so they've got to build at least a full house or 4 of a kind or whatever. And then everybody's going to reveal their hands. But all the cards that have been staked can be used in creating your hand. So kind of like you're sort of building up that center row in Texas Hold'em as you're playing the game and as you're staking. And you'll see some of these higher cards are actually worth more in the stake. So you've got to keep that in mind as you're staking the cards. The other little aspect to this is this little multiplier modifier is going to increase every time the dealer becomes the active player. This is going to bump up and then up and up and up until it gets to times 8. And so the game could prematurely end if this hits 8 or you run out of cards from the draw deck. And then the current active player will have to stake a card immediately to end it, and then you'll reveal your hands and go from there. Okay, let's look at how you would score the end of the round. So I've got a basic 3-player setup here. And so the 5th card was staked here by the dealer, and the player on the right here staked these 2 cards, player on the left staked those, so we've got 5 cards out. Let's say for our demonstration, the guy on the left won the game. So he is staked 3, you can see the 3 there, plus 3 there, so he's staked 6. The guy on the right here has staked 3 total, 2 plus 1, and the dealer has also staked 1. Now there's always a stake of 1 in the game, so you always count, basically what we do is we just count this card as 1. That way you can, when you play the game, you know, somebody can't just like not stake ever and then not ever lose or get any points. So you're always in for 1. So he won. So what we're going to do is we're going to take his total, 3 plus 2 is 5, add the 1 there for the 6, and then compare it to all the other players. So what we're going to do then is we're going to add 5, 6, And then for the dealer's case, it's 7. So 7 times the multiplier is 28. So the winner will get 28 points, and the dealer, this player here, will lose 28 points. So if you're playing with poker chip, basically you could give him 28 of your chips. In this case over here, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for the basic stake. So 9 times 4, 36. So he's going to lose 36 points and he's going to gain 36 points. And then basically you're going to play until either everybody has had a chance to be the dealer, or maybe you play twice around the table, you play to a certain number of points or whatever. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the overview. I hope you can tell I really like this game. I think if you are a poker player or know people that play poker and you're really into the whole pot odds, this game is going to be right down your alley. Because, you know, at the beginning of the game you get 5 or 10 cards, and you've got to pass 5 to the left. Sometimes you're going to get a hand pretty much garbage, but you're still going to have a little bit of trouble trying to figure out what to pass, because you don't want to give the guy to your left a whole bunch of good cards, because the higher the cards, you know, the better hand they're going to be. Sometimes you've got like 10 really good cards, and you're like, do I break up this full house? Do I break up this possible straight? You know, maybe I'm missing one card, you know, or something like that, or I've got a lower straight and a higher straight, and I know that I'm less likely to get past higher cards, sometimes or lower cards, but there's a little bit of doublethink there. Everybody goes, well, I don't expect to get, you know, higher cards, so I'm going to pass the higher cards, and then, you know, that whole thing. So the drafting part of it is really fun, and the way you can kind of stake cards to sort of push the game to end, as, you know, maybe you've got a really strong full house and you're going to stake cards quickly so that nobody else can build up a really, really good hand. But, you know, you're running a risk doing that as well. Sometimes you may start off with a really nice hand and just kind of hopefully let that multiplier build up and build up and build up. So there's a lot of really great strategy in this game with the drafting, the staking, and even at the end there with the passing. Because at the end, when there's 4 cards staked, you're passing and then discarding a card, and other people could steal them. And you're going to see by what's staked that, because you can use other people's stake cards in your hand, in your 5-card hand. So you're going to see that, and you're going to know what people are stealing and all that stuff. So it's like the game has like the first phase of the staking and the drafting, and that second phase of the drawing, the discarding, and then the possible stealing. And so you may steal cards to bounce it around the dealer because you don't want it going up. Or the dealer may just try to steal cards. He may throw down a 3 of 10s, even though he's not working on any hand with that, just so he can get that and ratchet up that multiplier. So there's like 2 totally different games. That's pretty cool. So yeah, and like I said at the beginning, the wild cards are pretty volatile. You stay away from those for your first several games, and then you've got the other little variants and things like that you can add in as everybody becomes more adept, and maybe the game feels somewhat samey after a bit. You're like, oh, you know, this kind of happened, this kind of happened. And then you throw in the wild cards, and then the game strategy totally changes. Then you can go back to not using the wild cards. Like I said, also at the very beginning of the video, it plays well from 2 to 5. And it was amazing. We played a 2-player game, and I was like, let's try it with 2. I don't think it'll work. But it really, it was totally like a different game. But it still worked really well, because it was just you 2 passing cards back and forth. And kind of the lower hands tend to win with less players, where if you got more players, somebody's going to get that big hand. So you've got to be a lot more cautious there. So the pacing is a lot different. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the review, and definitely take a look at this when it becomes more available.